A beast or soft? LeBron James.
In my era, he probably would have done good because with his physical stature, with him being a little bit bigger than a majority of the rest. So he probably would have held his own, but I don't think he would have been as successful as he is now. Like now is, man, you know what I mean? Like he doing it. Young boy doing it. You know what I mean? So, but it was a whole different era back then, bro.
So, beast or soft?
When Rasheed Wallace speaks, people listen, not because he's trying to go viral, but because he rarely filters what he believes that a champion with the Detroit Pistons and one of the most outspoken personalities of his era, Wallace didn't just share an opinion. He dropped a challenge to modern basketball thinking. His claim? LeBron's legacy will never command the same respect as Michael Jordan's. That's not just criticism. That's a direct hit at how history is being written. And in a league where debates are usually framed with diplomacy, Wallace went straight to hierarchy. Who stands above whom? Permanently. That's why the reaction wasn't just loud. It was explosive. LeBron. The silence that feels loud for what makes this moment different isn't the criticism, that it's the silence that LeBron has built a career on controlling narratives, on and off the court. From championships with the Cleveland Cavaliers to superstardom with the Los Angeles Lakers, he has always responded when legacy conversations heat up. But this time, nothing. No tweet. Interview quote. Subtle message. And in modern sports culture, silence isn't neutral, that it's interpreted. Some see composure, a legend above the noise. Others see calculation, refusing to give the comment oxygen. And some wonder if silence means the criticism hit closer than usual, because when you've answered every debate for 2 decades, choosing not to answer becomes the story. The center of Wallace's statement is something deeper than comparison, that it's mythology. Michael Jordan isn't just remembered. He's revered. 6 titles. 6 finals MVPs. No losses on the biggest stage with the Chicago Bulls. For many former players, especially from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, Jordan represents something untouchable. Perfection under pressure. Aura without compromise. Dominance without debate. When Wallace says LeBron can't reach that level of respect, he's not just evaluating skilled, he's defending an era's definition of greatness. Why this debate feels bigger than basketball, this isn't really about stats, rings, or longevity. It's about what greatness is supposed to look like. Old school dominance versus modern versatility. Myth versus evolution. Icon versus architect. And now the entire basketball world is split into 2 emotional reactions. Finally, someone said it. Or, here we go again, another generational bias. Either way, Wallace didn't just make a comment, he reopened the most sensitive argument in sports history.
And Wilt. That's my big team.
How you gonna say LeBron or Mike?
We'll dust y'all right the fuck off. We'll dust y'all off. My top 5 would dust your top. Who's your top 5 favorite players?
Who's your top? Who would you say? Who's your top 5?
Okay.
Who would you match against that team right there? I said.
When Wallace said respect isn't about numbers, he wasn't talking about statistics at all. He was talking about suffering that in his mind, and the mindset of many players from his era. Respect is forged when the odds are stacked against you, the roster isn't perfect, the path is brutal, and you still dominate anyway. To Wallace, greatness isn't what you achieve when everything is aligned, that it's what you impose when nothing is. That's why he emphasized circumstance over accomplishment. From that lens, choosing situations, building super teams, controlling environments, those things don't erase greatness, but they change how it's respected. That's the philosophical divide he was pointing at. Michael Jordan. The blueprint Wallace is defending. When Wallace says, you can't earn respect like MJ, he's talking about a specific legend structure. Getting beaten down physically for years, losing before winning, being forced to climb instead of a symbol, finally breaking through, then never letting go. Jordan's story, especially in the eyes of older players, is built on resistance. The league tried to stop him. Rivalries tried to break him. Rules and physical defense tried to wear him down. And when he finally reached the top, he stayed there without interruption. That narrative became the gold standard of competitive purity, not just winning after being tested to the limit. LeBron James. Why Wallace thinks the equation is different. Wallace isn't saying LeBron isn't great, he's saying LeBron's greatness is built on control, not resistance. Different path. Player empowerment era strategic team building mobility between franchises influence over roster direction longevity through adaptability that's modern dominance. Calculated, intelligent, sustainable. But to old school competitors, that feels less like surviving chaos and more like managing outcomes. And that difference matters emotionally, not logically. Because respect, the kind Wallace is talking about, isn't measured in efficiency or versatility. It's measured in how much the game tried to break you before you conquered it. The real reason this hit so hard, Wallace didn't attack LeBron's talent. He challenged the structure of modern greatness itself. But he basically asked, if you can shape your environment, is conquering it the same? If you build the path, is walking it as legendary? That's not a stat debate. That's a philosophy of competition. Why LeBron's silence feels so heavy because responding would mean engaging the premise. And the premise isn't measurable. You can't quantify suffering. You can't prove era difficulty. You can't objectively define respect. Instead, the debate lives where Wallace placed it, in emotion, identity, and generational pride. And that's why people are reacting so strongly. This isn't about who's better. It's about what greatness is supposed to feel like.
Who's better than Kareem?
Mike.
How? Why?
LeBron.
What makes them better than Kareem?
Tell him.
You're right. What Wallace said wasn't a skills debate. It was a moral framing of greatness. That he wasn't comparing rings, stats, or dominance. He was comparing how championships are pursued and what that pursuit means emotionally to other players. Let's unpack why this argument hits so hard. Michael Jordan, the build from within mythology for Wallace, is defending a narrative model of greatness. Not just a player. Jordan's story fits the classic sports hero arc. Arrives to a struggling franchise, gets physically punished for years, fails, repeatedly improves, internally finally breaks through, builds a dynasty. Without leaving, that story feels pure because the climb is linear, the environment isn't chosen, the adversity is unavoidable, the victory feels earned through suffering. To many old school players, that journey represents competitive integrity, not just winning, enduring first. LeBron James. The player empowerment era reality for LeBron represents a completely different philosophy. Control your career. Maximize your chances. Move strategically. Key differences. Left teams, instead of waiting for them to improve, collaborated with other superstars, intentionally treated roster construction like strategy, not fate, used leverage as a tool from a modern perspective. That's smart, rational, and powerful from a traditional warrior mindset. It can look like optimizing instead of enduring. That's the emotional friction Wallace tapped into. Why Wallace's criticism feels personal, even though it isn't. Because he attacked the legitimacy of the journey, not the results. He basically separated greatness into two types. Type 1, imposed greatness, you conquer whatever situation you're given. Type 2, engineered greatness, you shape the situation to increase your odds. Both can win championships. But Wallace argues only the first produces the kind of respect Jordan earned. That's a value judgment, not a performance judgment. The historical reality most people ignore. Here's where things get complicated. Jordan didn't literally do it alone. He had a Hall of Fame running mate, a Hall of Fame coach, a front office that eventually built a perfect system. But culturally, the story is remembered as Jordan conquering the league. Why? Because he never left to rebuild elsewhere. That single difference changes the emotional interpretation of everything. Why this debate will never end? Because it's actually three arguments disguised as one. What matters more, loyalty or leverage? Is controlling your career competitive strength or competitive escape? Should suffering be required for greatness? There's no objective answer, only generational philosophy. While LeBron not responding is actually powerful, silence avoids validating the framework. If he responds, he accepts the premise that greatness must be judged by hardship endured rather than dominance achieved. But LeBron's career argues a different thesis. Intelligence is part of competition strategy, is part of greatness control, is part of winning.
Somehow, some way, a GOAT changes the game, changes the rules. Like, this motherfucker's dominating so much. We gotta change the rules up on this shit. I don't know if you can be in that GOAT debate and you're still playing. I still think right now KD is the best player in the league. I can't put him in GOAT status yet because he's still playing. And the same thing with Bron. The GOAT is more than just your basketball play. It's the charisma of that player, of that individual. I'm giving back to the community. I'm helping changing lives. GOAT status is more than just basketball.
Rasheed Wallace has never been the kind of person to hold his thoughts back. So when he speaks about respect, legacy, and true greatness, people lean in and pay attention. He competed head-to-head with Michael Jordan in his prime years. Later, he shared the court with LeBron James during the intense battles of the mid-2000s. That rare experience gives Rasheed Wallace a front-row view of two completely different basketball eras. Not from highlights, but from real competition. His opinion isn't built on memories or opinions from afar. It comes from first-hand clashes against legends. When the clip surfaced online, it moved fast. Within hours, social media was flooded with reactions, debates, and heated comment threads. Many LeBron supporters dismissed Wallace's words, saying he sounded frustrated or too tied to the past. But longtime fans who watched Jordan dominate in real time reacted differently. They didn't argue, they agreed. For them, Wallace simply voiced something they had been thinking for years, but rarely heard spoken so directly. What makes his viewpoint hit harder is what he didn't do. He never tried to tear down LeBron's achievements or question the numbers. There was no debate about championships, MVP awards, or scoring records. Instead, he focused on something less measurable but far more meaningful. He talked about the journey, the grind, the environment, and the challenges that shape greatness long before the spotlight celebrates it. And that's why the conversation refuses to fade. Statistics can be compared, argued, and rearranged endlessly. But the road a player travels, the pressure, the competition, the era they survive, that's harder to quantify. Wallace wasn't discussing who finished with more accolades. He was talking about how greatness is built in the first place. And that deeper question is one that numbers alone can never fully answer.
In my opinion, Mike wasn't all that good of a defender.
Mike who?
Jordan.
Defensive player of the year.
All that was
10 times. I think it was 10 all defensive teams. That Michael Jordan.
All that's you know what all that is, dog.
What is it?
You know what all that is. Not all that's NBA shit. Yeah, we like Mike. We gonna put him out there. Da 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 da. I'm talking about being out there. I seen this motherfucker get his ass bust where he couldn't stop a motherfucker. Yes, Mike fouled too, but no, they're not gonna call the shit because the refs want to eat his dick all day. Oh no, I'm not gonna call that on Mike. But down the other end, oh, you fouled Mike. Yeah, Mike. Hey, Mike, my guy, go to the line. Shoot. No, I seen Mike get his ass ate up before. Oh, against J.R. Ryder. Yeah, problem against Clyde Drexler. Shit, don't forget the early Joe Dumars. You know what I'm saying? It was again, it's part of the game.
Wallace explained his view in the most direct way possible. In his mind, greatness reveals itself in how a player reacts to failure. When a loss happens, the real question is simple. Do you run from the moment, or do you face it head on? He described a mindset built on accountability. Instead of blaming teammates, management, or circumstances, the focus turns inward. Improvement becomes personal, urgent, and unavoidable. That, he believes, is where legendary careers truly take shape. For Wallace, the difference between good and unforgettable isn't talent alone. It's how someone responds when pressure is overwhelming, when options are limited, and when quitting would be easier than continuing. That response, he says, defines everything that follows. The standard set by Michael Jordan 4. Wallace pointed to Jordan as the clearest example of that philosophy. When setbacks came early in his career, he didn't look for an escape route. Instead, he treated every defeat like unfinished business that demanded a response. Year after year, he returned sharper, stronger, and more determined. Teams that once stood in his way eventually fell one by one. Championships, in Wallace's telling, were not opportunities handed over. They were battles won through persistence and relentless adjustment. To him, Jordan's legacy is tied to endurance. The struggle wasn't something to avoid, it was something to overcome. Each obstacle became part of the story, and every victory carried the weight of what came before it. The path chosen by LeBron James 4. Wallace then turned to LeBron's career, focusing not on achievements, but on decisions. After major setbacks, he noted, LeBron chose new environments, new teammates, and new situations that offered stronger chances of success. Those moves brought championships, something no one disputes. But Wallace argues the feeling of those victories is different. To him, they reflect careful construction rather than survival through hardship. In his view, strategy replaced struggle as the main driver. He believes true legends emerge when options are limited and pressure is unavoidable. When there's no backup plan, no reset button, and no fresh start waiting somewhere else. Only the challenge in front of you. That, he says, is the proving ground where lasting respect is earned. A pattern people can't ignore. Wallace suggested that each major chapter of LeBron's career followed a similar rhythm. When one situation stopped working, another opportunity appeared elsewhere. New teams formed, new expectations rose, and the cycle continued. That pattern, he says, is why some observers struggle to view the journey the same way they view past legends. Not because of lack of skill, LeBron's ability is widely recognized, but because the path itself feels different. He also made it clear he isn't alone. According to him, many players from earlier eras share this perspective quietly. Some choose not to speak publicly, knowing how intense the reaction can be. Wallace simply decided to say what others keep to themselves. Silence that speaks loudly. What surprised many people wasn't just the criticism, it was the response that followed. Or rather, the lack of one. Normally, direct public criticism brings quick reactions, statements, or subtle responses online. This time, nothing. No public message. No explanation. No direct reply. That silence quickly became part of the conversation itself. Fans, analysts, and commentators began debating what it might mean. Some believe silence signals reflection. Others think it suggests disagreement that words can't easily resolve. Either way, the absence of a response only intensified attention on the original comments. Two different definitions of greatness. Step back, and the conversation becomes bigger than any single player. It reflects two completely different ideas about what greatness should look like. One belief values endurance, staying put, fixing weaknesses, and overcoming obstacles without changing the environment. That's the mindset Wallace connects with players like Kobe Bryant and Dirk Nowitzki, who built their reputations through long struggles before reaching the top. The other belief focuses on optimization, making smart career decisions, maximizing opportunities, and using control over one's path to create the best possible chance of winning. In today's game, that approach has become increasingly common and widely accepted. Wallace doesn't say one method is completely wrong. His argument is simpler. They don't generate the same kind of respect in the eyes of everyone watching. Why this debate won't end. At its core, this discussion isn't about points, trophies, or records. Those can be counted and compared easily. The real argument is about meaning, what people believe greatness should represent. Some fans admire dominance achieved through persistence against the odds. Others admire intelligence, control, and strategic decision-making. Both perspectives have strong support, and neither is disappearing anytime soon. That's why this conversation keeps returning. It isn't just about comparing players. It's about defining what success should look like in the first place. The question's still hanging in the air. Wallace didn't deny talent. He didn't question accomplishments. Instead, he raised a deeper issue. Whether the way success is achieved shapes how it's remembered. For many observers, that distinction matters just as much as the results themselves. And that's why the discussion keeps growing louder, even without new games being played. So now the spotlight shifts to the audience. Is Wallace describing an uncomfortable truth about how greatness is judged? Or is he holding modern players to standards that no longer fit today's game?